To order, the date is Thursday, May 19th, and the time is 9:03 a.m. So before we begin, there's some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your phones. This will ensure that we do not hear any feedback that can interrupt the meeting. During the meeting, all public participants, except for board members and district staff, will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Only the board members and staff will be visible on Zoom. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After the budget presentation, the chair will announce public comment. The clerk will recognize any public attendees who has indicated they wish to speak. So with that, we'll move on to item 2, roll call.
Okay. Mr. Bessinger?
Here.
Mr. Chiesa?
Here.
Mr. Couch? Ms. Fagazi? Ms. Lewis? Mr. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Pacheco-Werner?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Pereira? Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Preciado?
Here.
Mr. Rickman?
Here.
Dr. Sheriff?
Here.
Ms. Shucklian?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Reyes? Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. On to item 3, I'm going to ask everyone to please stand, and Dr. Sheriff, if you could lead us in the pledge, I'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I always get off, but last week at our board meeting, we had all the kids in for a drawing contest. And you ever hear the Pledge of Allegiance when you have a bunch of kids in a room? It is much more enthusiastic than we are, for sure. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the public hearing for review and comments on the district's 2022-2023 recommended budget. Smear.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good morning. I'd like to quickly introduce this item in the budget process for the Valley Air District. We were excited to talk about the 2022-23 budget. There's going to be a lot of important work in the coming year, and it's a great opportunity for sharing exactly what we do with the resources and how we're going to be able to accomplish that work. Just want to remind the board and the public, under board policy, the first step is holding the governing board ad hoc budget subcommittee, where the board selects a subcommittee, which is intended to help guide development of the budget prior to the public hearings that are required under state law, today being the first of those 2 public hearings. I wanted to express our gratitude first and foremost to the subcommittee that met last month in April, that consisted of Board Chair Reyes, Dr. Pacheco-Werner, Mayor Preciado, Dr. Sheriffs, Councilmember Lewis, and Supervisor Mendez. Appreciate you taking the time to go through all the details of the budget and providing really helpful feedback in that meeting. After that subcommittee under state law in May, which is today's hearing, your board holds the first of 2 public hearings on the budget, with the first hearing being held today for the purpose of allowing the public to hear about the budget and to have an opportunity to comment on the budget with no action by the board at today's hearing. This hearing needs to be separate from the public hearing at which the district adopts the budget, which is held in June, and that's when we're required to have an adopted budget going into the new fiscal year. So every year in this presentation, we go through a detailed presentation of not only what we anticipate in the coming year in terms of workload and resources and how we plan on using those resources. We also outline the priorities that your board establishes and also take a look back at what we were able to accomplish in the prior year with the resources that were provided to the district and what accomplishments and work was addressed in the prior year. So we don't only just go through a bunch of figures and fiscal details, but we try to take the time to report out on where the district is in terms of its activities and what we see in the coming year. It's part of your board's values in terms of holding ourselves accountable and showing strong transparency in what we do, and it's something that we take a lot of pride in being able to lay out that level of detail as we go through the budget process here. So if you could call up the presentation, please. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the agenda today. As I just mentioned, we're going to do a look back for the fiscal year 21-22. I want to lay out the guiding principles that we're using in developing the budget consistent with your board's guidance and share with you how that was used to develop the budget. the outlook in the coming year in 22-23, the highlights in the budget for 22-23. And then we're going to actually go through, I've got a team of hardworking individuals here that were all instrumental in putting this budget together, along with our management team and the district as a whole. We're going to go through the significant projected workload that we anticipate. That's going to be presented by Morgan Lambert, one of our Deputy Air Pollution Control Officers. We're going to talk about the efficiencies that we look to use to help address that workload and the customer service that we provide and that exceptional service that we expect out of the agency in terms of serving the public. That's going to be presented by Ryan Hayashi, another of our Deputy Air Pollution Control Officers. Shiraz Gill, our third Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer, is going to talk about the spending plan for the emission reduction incentive grants. Through the advocacy efforts over the years, we're fortunate to have a lot of clean air funding that we talk about in this budget process. Very complicated, a lot of different funding streams that come into that program. So Shiraz Gill will share how we intend on spending those funds. And then we have our Interim Director of Administrative Services, Ryan Buchanan, here to my right, who's going to be going over the revenue and expenditure details of the budget and what's being proposed in the 2023 budget. So I will start, and I'll thank you in advance for the patience and getting through some information here as we go through all these parts of the presentation. I'll start with prior year achievements and what we're able to accomplish this prior year with the resources that were provided to the Air District staff. First and foremost, we did maintain, again, a really strong focus on providing excellent customer service to our regulated communities, to our residents, businesses, agencies, all the stakeholders that we provide service to from a variety of facets that you'll hear about a little later in the presentation. Take a lot of pride in this, and it's something that we continue to make sure with the resources that we have, we continue providing that level of service. Part of that is having effective engagement with all these various stakeholders, starting with our residents, but obviously those that we regulate, the agencies that we partner with. We've supported new programs in the Valley. We've advocated for resources not only on our behalf, but also on behalf of other Valley partners that are looking for those resources to assist with all the various priorities in the Valley for improving quality of life and public health here. We're able to fulfill, once again, and exceed actually all of our state and federal mandates in a timely fashion with innovation, ingenuity to minimize costs in implementing these various measures that we have in place. As you can see on the slide here, we're above our targets for NOx emissions, PM2.5, VOC emissions. Implemented and enforced all of our rules that your board adopted and put into place, and operate very efficient programs with relatively low administrative overhead as compared to other agencies across the state. We've seen air quality progress, and there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of improving air quality, but there is no doubt that as we continue to work locally, as we work with our partners at the state and federal level to reduce air pollution, that those investments work in terms of reducing not only the air pollution side of it, but also seeing actual improvements to the air quality itself in the Valley. We're continuing to see that improvement as we move forward in our clean air journey. For example, in 2021, the Valley experienced the lowest, what's called federal 8-hour ozone design value. This is the official metric that's used to look at some of the federal air quality standards. It's the lowest design value on record. So we're continuing to see this decline and march towards being able to meet these federal standards. Of course, we are being impacted by wildfires increasingly during the summer, and that's something that we continue to also work on and review in terms of not only how to minimize those impacts, but also make sure that we accommodate those impacts in the way that we look at these different standards. That demonstrates a 94% progress towards meeting the 84 part per billion standard, that we put a plan together at this board level and then with the state back in the late 2000s. Ever since that point, we've been working to actually meet the standard, and we're now 94% of the way there. In fact, potentially even there, and we're reviewing the data, the 2021 data right now. It's very, very tremendous improvements with respect to ozone. In the last winter, as you heard at the April board meeting, the Valley continues to see significant improvements for PM2.5. That's when we have our peak PM2.5 values, significant progress in reducing concentrations across all counties. Unhealthy days have significantly been reduced. Good days have been increased. It's a good trend in terms of just that ongoing work to keep reducing those peak concentrations during the winter. We actually had 0 exceedances of the 65 microgram standard for a second consecutive year, and only the third time since the 03-04 winter season. So it's those peak values, those higher values that can be of significant concern are definitely being shaved off and reduced. And overall population exposure to these higher concentrations has been reduced by 70% in terms of the number of county days that you see going over the federal standard of 35 micrograms, which is the latest standard that we're working to meet as well. And so what we've seen is tremendous ongoing progress, leading to, in 2021, EPA finding that the Valley has actually attained the 97 24-hour standard of 65 micrograms with 2018 and 20 data, which is a great development. Last year, we implemented our relatively new PM 2.5 plan. Time is moving forward here at a fairly rapid pace, especially with COVID. It's kind of hard to, where I think a lot of us are losing sort of some time horizons at times here. But so in 2018, your board adopted this plan. We've been working very hard to implement this plan. There's a lot in this plan in terms of various regulatory measures, incentive measures, outreach measures, a lot of different facets to the plan. Our actual commitments are primarily reliant on regulatory measures. We have a lot of other measures as well that are in the plan, but that included, for example, updating our residential wood burning strategy, which last year we were able to implement, for, as you heard in April, with a detailed report on that, more no burn days in these hotspot areas than ever, while increasing our education outreach in our communities. I think what you're seeing, and we hope to validate this with some public surveying that we're going to be doing here shortly, but what we're seeing is a much stronger acceptance and recognition of the importance of reducing these residential wood burning emissions across the Valley, and residents responding to that call. We also adopted a number of amendments to different rules here at the Air District, Rule 4702, 4354, 4352. These are things that are moving forward now, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Amendments to our flare rule, our boiler, steam generator, and process heater rule. We're implementing now the new ag burn phase-out strategy that your board adopted last year, with a near complete phase-out of ag open burning for remaining open burning by the end of 2024. So we're actually in the middle now of implementing that strategy. And that includes not only the regulatory component, which is obviously key to that strategy, but also the new incentives that are being provided to assist growers in really adopting these new emerging alternatives, including soil incorporation and others that allow us to transition away from open burning. Last year, there was a lot of activity with respect to AB 617, which is known as a Community Air Protection Program. As you can see here on this slide, a lot of work in terms of the 4 communities that were selected by CARB, by the state, for work under this program at South Central Fresno, Shafter, Stockton, Arvin, Lamont. That includes establishing steering committees, community air monitoring plans, bless you, Dr. Schultz, community emission reduction programs that were developed in these communities, and now implementing those community emission reduction programs, which is a very intensive process, very, very closely coordinated with the community steering committees. So for those 3 communities, there are many, many meetings and interactions that occur with subcommittees, with the larger steering committees, that allow us to really take that community input in the way that we implement these various measures. And then there's work that is also ongoing with respect to the 617 requirement associated with the expedited BART requirements that is also ongoing as well. Quite a bit of activity there in the prior year. One of the big priorities for your board also is continuing to look for new funding opportunities and bringing the Valley its fair share and much needed resources with respect to clean air investments. Last year, again, very busy in this front. We're able to secure about $180 million in state funding for alternatives to open burning. That's funding the program that I mentioned earlier. $170 million in state farmer program that we use to deploy clean equipment, including the latest generation tractors, zero emission utility terrain vehicles, and just a range of opportunities that we're now funding with that program, with recent enhancements that also include looking for even more opportunities with the smallest growers that are also transitioning their equipment as well. $13 million in state Moyer funds, federal funds that we compete and are actually selected top scorers nationally on a regular basis, had about $27 million last year in new federal funds that we're able to secure these very competitive processes. $21 million for residential wood burning replacements, tractors, and trucks. combined, they're nearly $50 million between different federal funding opportunities that we're able to compete for. And you just go down the slide here, and I'll close it out with that $37 million of state funding that we're able to advocate and then compete for zero emission demonstration projects across the Valley. So we spend quite a bit of funding and work very closely with Valley entities to partner on these clean air projects through our incentive programs. Last year, we provided about $250 million in clean air grants to replace over 15,000 units throughout the Valley. These are large numbers. There's significant reductions. For last year, it's over 21,000 tons of emissions that were reduced. These funds were matched with over $400 million of partner funding for a combined total of nearly $700 million of investment. That's a really large number that's being put out there to achieve these various clean air projects. Here are some of the examples of some of the various ways these funds were spent. Working with Valley growers on over 1,500 ag equipment units that were replaced. I mentioned the zero emission all-terrain vehicles, utility terrain vehicles. Working with Valley fleets to replace and repair trucks. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Working with public agencies, $6 million to replace public fleet vehicles with cleaner vehicles. And also supporting alternative fuel infrastructure projects, over $3 million. As you can see in this next set of information, a lot of activity across a lot of these different areas that we spend our various incentive dollars on. $33 million for ag burning projects, alternatives to ag burning projects. $25 million is a component of that in terms of expanding the chipping fleet and providing these alternatives to growers as we implement our new regulatory phase out. Looking at new electric opportunities, like the $1 million that were spent on replacing yard trucks with electric trucks, is something that we see as an emerging and growing opportunity. Working with dairies to electrify their operations, about $5 million there spent in that sector. Locomotives, which is a very large portion of our mobile source emissions, $8 million in replacing older locomotives with later generation and cleaner, much cleaner locomotives. And then we operate the statewide Volkswagen NOx mitigation funding for school transit and shuttle buses. And so we expended about $10 million there through that process and are actually recognized and were asked to administer that program on behalf of the state. And now, as a growing area, given some new state requirements as well, doing a lot more work and working with our commercial landscaping operators to deploy zero emission and now pretty broadly available commercial landscaping equipment, which is an exciting opportunity for us. We also repaired more than 9,000 vehicles through our Tune and Tune Up program at about $9 million. Spent about $4 million to replace about 500 vehicles through the Drive Clean and the San Joaquin replacement program. About $11 million in rebates for almost 4,000 electric vehicles through the rebate match program that we have that is used to help deploy those vehicles. Van pooling, a lot of funding, about $9 million directed to helping residents replace wood burning devices with cleaner devices, primarily natural gas. Now seeing more interest in heat pumps as well, electric heat pumps as well. And then working with our residents to replace these older gas mowers with electric mowers through the Clean Green Yard Machine program. Another really important area of priority for your board is continuing to build on our public outreach and engagement strategies to really help promote public participation in our clean air measures and really getting residents involved in what we're doing and raise awareness of the progress that we're making, all those ongoing efforts and the remaining challenge and how we can all be involved in helping to address those challenges. So this is something that we continue to work on very hard in this last year. We operate a comprehensive education and outreach campaign. We do it in both English and Spanish and continue to look for enhancements in the way that we provide this information to really reach all of our different communities. The large region that we have jurisdiction over, there's always tremendous opportunities in partnering to get this message out there. For example, working with our students and parents, teachers through our Healthier Living Schools program that continues to evolve as we continue to see even our schools evolve and really think about these issues differently over time and in a much more deliberate way. There's tools that we continue to work on for providing accurate and timely information to the public. This is something that even this year now we're having a lot of conversation around in terms of, particularly during wildfire season, how that information can be best shared. grant funding awareness, for residents, businesses, agencies, and others that are eligible for the different grant opportunities that I just mentioned. It's very important that people are aware of these, and they do evolve very quickly, and there's always a lot of opportunity there. And then we have summer and winter campaigns, depending on the issues during each of those seasons, where we encourage actions to reduce air pollution, and really side by side with the regulatory strategies that we're working on every single day, are also trying to really empower the public to do whatever we can collectively to help reduce air pollution. And a lot of community involvement. Our outreach and communications team, along with a lot of our other staff, really enjoy and work very hard to participate in many local events throughout the Valley. Earth Day, Air Quality Awareness Week. And it's actually throughout the year. There's many opportunities, health fairs, and a variety of other forums, community events that we are very happy to participate in and support. We do a lot of communication with various Valley media, radio, TV, print, and really try to highlight the opportunities and the work that's going on. Press events that, again, really try to showcase these model projects that are happening throughout the Valley. And then what you'll hear and see a draft of this for the latest year, the annual report to the community that we provide, that actually based on Mayor Preciado's great idea, we offer both in English and in Spanish now. We've been doing that for the last couple of years. Very great resource that we make available on our webpage. Have it printed as well for those that need for that to be distributed. We also there's a lot going on with respect to issues that have a nexus to air quality, and so we try to be proactive and helpful in pursuing and supporting efforts across these different areas to really help us with our air quality challenge. We all know here that wildfires are a major source of concern and air pollution in the Valley. They overwhelm local emissions efforts. Just one big wildfire is enough to really just set us back in terms of air quality and air pollution and public health. And so we have a comprehensive strategy that we've actually been implementing for many years to really try to support these efforts to better manage our forests, to partner, to provide better information to the public, empower our land management agencies, promote prescribed burning and do it in a very careful, methodical way. We also partner with Valley Chambers of Commerce to implement green team programs, sustainability programs with Valley businesses and other entities to promote recycling, energy efficiency, air quality education, really, again, to help empower these various entities to be a part of the solution. One of the priorities for your board recently has been engaging with our public health officers throughout the counties and health directors to really see what kind of leveraging we can have with these various programs, not only the expertise from their staff, but also their connections and their messaging and their outreach approaches, and how we could help support those efforts, as well as have them help us, for example, with issues like when we have wildfire impacts, and really working together to try to do a better job in terms of responding to some of these issues. And then we also support a lot of air quality research efforts to really help inform our strategies. The board has always placed a high priority on using the best science to help inform and make sure that our strategies are effective in actually addressing these various issues. And so these are some of the examples of efforts that we were involved in terms of ag equipment inventory, demonstration projects for ag, open burning alternatives, working with local universities, really trying to build up the research capacity to really help address these various issues, and evaluating air monitoring technologies and providing that information to the public. This last year, as you've heard a lot about, and wanted to just reiterate here, we did have a very effective response to COVID-19, and really being proactive and thinking about how to continue all of our activities and the services that we provide in our air quality mission, while also ensuring the safety and well-being of our staff, our stakeholders, our community at large. We continued all of our services and implemented the Economic Assistance Initiative to really help our residents and businesses that were facing some real difficulties during the pandemic, and continue to prioritize our health mission and attaining the standards even during these changed circumstances. We continue to really hold ourselves to the standard that the board and the public expects in terms of excellence in government, and that's looking at it from a number of different perspectives in terms of productivity, issuing our permits in a timely fashion, conducting inspections, administering various grant programs and projects and regulatory measures, designing, adopting, and implementing those measures. We continue to really push hard and making sure that we're, as we benchmark ourselves and think about where we are in implementing all these different programs, are really up there in terms of being efficient and effective in the way that we do all these various activities, providing excellent service throughout the Valley, maintaining a high degree of staff morale and job satisfaction. We have a great relationship with our our Employees Association here that was formed after decertifying SEIU, and our STAR work culture is a big part of who we are. It's really integrated into everything that we do, the service, the positive attitude, and our ability to work together as a team to really help achieve and accomplish some real, tangible, measurable progress in all these different areas is something that we take a lot of pride in, along with the fiscal side and transparency and accountability. Once again, this last year, a strong financial audit, best possible score in every area due to the great work of our finance team, and you'll hear a bit more from the finance team as we lay out our budget here, and including being recognized by the GFOA for excellence in financial reporting and making those reports accessible to the public and understandable to the public. So I'll lay out now the budget guiding principles that were used in developing our budget, and again, starting first and foremost with providing adequate resources for providing excellent customer service, and in this very important role that we play, being able to deliver on these various expectations that the public has of us, including, for example, expedited permit and grant processing, a lot of opportunities that are available through these different programs, satisfying our mandates and legal obligations under the Clean Air Act and other requirements, full public accountability and participation. So that means as we develop rules or other various activities, having strong, for example, public engagement processes. These are all very important, but also resource-intensive activities that occur to ensure that accountability and participation is there. Public education and outreach, again, focusing on that in this coming year as we continue in our clean air journey. It's super important and a very high priority of this board to make sure the public is aware of what's going on, is empowered in that process. The sound science and modeling that we rely on to be able to do, for example, new plans that are now being developed, the measures that come out of those plans. Again, this coming year, we need to make sure that we continue investing in that, and then continuous improvement innovation. What I mean by that is we do consider ourselves and are very innovative in the way that we do what we do, and invest in technology, invest in things that actually have good returns in terms of what you get out of those investments. And so that is one of the principles that's embedded in the budget. We use a zero-based budgeting principle. This is not broadly used by public agencies, and what we mean by this is that we really lay it all out in terms of what the workload is in the coming year, and we start with a zero baseline. We don't do a budget where we start with what we have and then only look at, say, incremental extra work that's coming in the coming year. We actually lay out all of the projected workload and evaluate every opportunity for efficiencies, every opportunity for enhancing the way that we do all of that work. And then only after doing that review, after looking at that from a zero basis, do we then, lay out, some of the needed resources in terms of, exactly where those need to be. And then, of course, continuing to respond to any sort of COVID-19 impacts is something that we have to keep an eye on into the future. And so as far as our fiscal outlook for 2022 and 2023, just wanted to give you just a couple of quick highlights. We do see our stationary source operating revenues as stable, and that's something, even through the pandemic, we didn't see any issues there in terms of any impacts coming out of that. We're not proposing an increase in permit fees in this budget. We do have sufficient revenues, that are adequate in terms of where we are with our various budget needs here. And just a reminder that our revenues are definitely more stable than, say, some other revenues that you may hear about, not dependent on sales, property, and occupancy taxes, for example, that sometimes can fluctuate more just based on what's going on with the economy and some of the other issues that may be faced by other agencies. Our state and federal operating grants are projected to be stable. Some of the examples, like our EPA 103, 105 grants, those are still there and will continue to be there. And there is significant funding and workload from new incentive funding and mandates that, once again, there's ongoing expected work that keeps being developed as we all work together with the state and the federal government on responding to various mandates. We do anticipate significant revenue from the current year state budgets. You're going to hear a bit more about that, not only in this presentation, but also during the regular board meeting after this public hearing. And there are revenues that go along with these various state funding sources that are available to offset our costs that are also embedded into the budget. I just want to hit really quickly on some of the strategic challenges and opportunities here in the coming year and beyond. Obviously, we do have an air quality challenge despite all the progress that we've been making. And so we do need to continue efforts to reduce air pollution through our various plans and control measures. And that is something that is a high priority for your board. It's something the staff will continue to work on in the coming year. That means adopting some of the remaining measures under our PM 2.5 plan. For example, we're working on enhancements to our conservation management practice program. It's one of the things that is currently ongoing. It's implementing all the newly adopted measures. So we adopted a lot of new rules, and we're now in the midst of actually implementing those rules, which means a lot of compliance assistance and making sure that various permitting and other activities are conducted. There's a new Ozone Plan that is going to be adopted or presented to your board early in the next fiscal year. And so this is going to be another big opportunity for talking about, where we're going to be in terms of air quality and what's going to be in that plan. There are maintenance plans. As we meet different standards for ozone and PM 2.5, we're required to adopt what are called maintenance plans. And so these are also in the works and are going to be something that your board will hear about in the coming year. Then working with Carbon EPA to get these plans approved and to fully address all the Clean Air Act requirements, including what's been evolving and becoming much more difficult to address, the new contingency requirements. So these are things that are going to be a very high priority for your board, as well as something that's going to be very intense set of processes in the coming year with the staff through public engagement. Administering all these different programs that I just mentioned, the incentive programs, and taking advantage of these new state and federal funding opportunities is something that is an ongoing process. Your board often hears and takes action on the best way to spend these dollars and to make sure that the programs are positioned well for our value stakeholders. So that is something, as we get these different funds, that you're going to continue to hear a lot about in terms of how to spend those funds. And then actually later on this morning, you're going to be hearing about this issue, which is how do we continue to seek additional reductions from mobile sources under state and federal jurisdiction? As we all know, in the Valley and throughout the state, and actually throughout the country, mobile sources are the single biggest source of air pollution, not only for air toxic or for criteria air pollution for our standards, but also for air toxics as well as greenhouse gas emissions. So that's something that there's a lot of development going on in that space at the state level, at the federal level. So it's going to be very important that we keep an eye on that and participate and make sure that we try to maximize those reductions here in the Valley. Partnering on these various climate and air quality initiatives that are going on. There's a lot of activity going on at the state and federal level in this space, and your board has been active in this and really promoting, taking advantage of these opportunities and being at the table and looking for opportunities as those conversations are going on. Working with our Valley communities and building on the work that we've done through AB 617, through our Environmental Justice Advisory Group, and the relationships that we've been building, and working on that even more in the coming year, and really trying to find even more opportunities to really promote the board's environmental justice strategy. That's something that is ongoing and we'll continue building in the coming year. And then setting the example for other public agencies. We take a lot of pride in the way that we operate our programs, everything from our work culture to some of the recent examples of the enhanced telecommuting that we've been able to develop and the balance that we've been able to strike with that. Our fleet transition to zero emission vehicles in the coming couple of years. Those are very innovative and very good examples that other agencies may be able to benefit from. And then of course the public education and outreach that I've mentioned before. That's something that we need to continue really focusing on in the coming year and really look for resources to assist with that. Now, what is in the budget? Just real quick on the budget highlights. So the total operating budget is up 7%. That reflects a number of different things. It reflects the second year of the labor agreement with the staff that will obviously have a fiscal impact associated with that. It's a full year funding of, your board did take a number of actions for this current fiscal year, some position enhancements. Those are now reflected as full year funding in the proposed budget. And it does reflect a 5.5% salary savings through position control. This is something, as you look at turnover and the way that we manage salary savings in terms of making sure that we have an ability to fill positions in different programs based on sort of what the peaks and valleys are with workload. That is reflected in the budget and is an important component of that. There are no permit fee increases proposed in the budget. As I mentioned earlier, there's significant workload that is absorbed through efficiencies and program flexibilities and incorporating this workload into various programs that we have. There's strong public education and outreach embedded into the budget with the resources that are being proposed. Expeditious administration of our incentive programs. There's actually $563 million of incentive grants in the proposed budget that we're excited to share details with you on. And overall, it's a balanced budget with adequate reserves and contingencies, and one that includes resources that allow us to meet the guiding principles that I mentioned earlier. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Morgan Lambert, who's going to go through the significant projected workload that is being addressed by the budget, and also just have a sip of water. That was spent a few minutes there. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Samara. Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members of the board. Next year, the district is expecting significant workload across all the major programmatic areas that we have. In the next few slides, I'll present some of the highlights of that workload. The district is faced with significant workload associated with the implementation of Assembly Bill 617 mandates. When a new community is selected by CARB under AB 617, it represents a multi-year commitment to working with the community on monitoring within the community, as well as developing and implementing emission reduction plans. And when an additional community is selected, the workload is actually additive at this point in time because we're not far enough along in the process to have completed the process with any of the prior year communities that we have. The district must plan, install, and operate community air monitoring networks in the communities of Arvin, Lamont, South Central Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton. Must also work with the community steering committees to develop and implement the numerous measures that were included within the community emission reduction programs. And this coming year, ARB, in consultation with the district and Valley residents, will also consider additional impacted communities under year 5 to potentially undertake community monitoring emission reduction programs. And it'll be very important, as in previous years, for the district to provide sound air quality information and analysis to help inform that process that CARB goes through. AB 617 also required air districts that are in non-attainment of one or more air pollutants to adopt an expedited schedule for implementation of best available retrofit control technology. Your board did that back in 2018, and the district is in the final stages of implementing the BART schedule adopted by your board, and will be completed that in the next year. The state has also adopted a new annual emissions reporting rule, which the district will begin implementing. This rule will dramatically increase the number of facilities required to report annual emissions inventory data, and also the amount and types of information that will be required as part of such reporting. When compared to other districts, the district is well positioned to take on this mandate based on our existing emissions inventory program and protocols, but it will still result in significantly increased workload for both the district as well as affected facilities as the requirements are phased in over the next several years. And lastly, the district must now compile and report emission control technology demonstrations to a new statewide clearinghouse for best available control technology, toxic best available control technology, and then BARC, which is best available retrofit control technology. Now, we've always done these evaluations internally, and we do this as part of our permitting process, but now it's an added layer of us having to coordinate with the state and make sure that those clearinghouses stay up to date with the most relevant information. And all of these areas will require extensive public engagement to help involve or to guide the district's efforts as we move forward with implementing AB 617. With the adoption of the 2018 PM 2.5 plan, the district is now in the process of implementing the commitments contained within the plan. Extensive public engagement will be necessary as we move forward with developing the new control measures that were included in the plan. Focus areas for this next year include the on-farm conservation management practices, as well as the contingency measure strategies, which will be necessary to secure final approval for elements of the plan. To date, the EPA has approved the portions of the 2018 plan for the 2006 PM 2.5 standard, and is in the process of reviewing the remaining portions of the plan pertaining to the 1997 and 2012 standards. Over the next year, the district will be working with CARB to prepare additional technical analyses and amendments as necessary to help secure final approval of those plans by the federal EPA. Furthermore, the district, along with coalition of stakeholders, will also need to work hard at the state and federal level to secure and administer the incentive funding that is necessary to get the emission reductions that were called for in the plan. On the ozone front, in October of 2015, the EPA adopted the newest 8-hour ozone standard, and it lowered the standard from 75 parts per billion down to 70 parts per billion. The district has begun development of the we're calling it the 2022 Ozone Plan, and your board took action on some of the initial requirements back in 2020. The plan is scheduled to be brought to your board for consideration this summer, and that will then begin the extensive public engagement process necessary as we move forward with developing any new control measures included in the plan. Additionally, the district will need to work with CARB and over the coming years to provide additional analyses and technical documentation necessary to secure EPA approval of the plan. In addition, there will be significant effort required to develop ozone and PM maintenance plans. Once we attain a standard, we then have to put in place another type of plan, which is called a maintenance plan to support ongoing attainment. And we have several upcoming maintenance plans we'll need to work on this next year, including an updated PM10 maintenance plan, a plan for the 1-hour ozone standard, as well as a plan for the 1997 PM2.5 standard, which we've all come into attainment with. The proposed budget contains over $560 million in appropriations to implement new and existing voluntary incentive grant programs, the specifics of which will be covered a little bit later in the presentation under the incentive spending plan. Administering these programs and dispersing this level of incentive funds will require extensive work. The district must work with stakeholders to identify and solicit projects for funding, as there must be willing partners to take part in these programs. We'll also be working to develop additional online application portals to enhance and streamline the access to these programs. Also be working, the applications must also, once we get the applications, they must be evaluated to determine eligibility and compliance with the applicable regulations and guidelines. We must also calculate the emission reductions for all the applications received by the district for incentive-based reduction projects. They must also be verified through ongoing monitoring and inspections to ensure that the reductions initially happen and continue to happen as required by the terms of the grant contracts. We're also working to develop and implement the new community identified programs developed under AB 617 community emission reduction programs. Each of these programs must include a new set of guidelines which has to be approved by CARB before state funding can be used for these programs. And for much of the funding, the enabling legislation imposes ambitious deadlines for liquidation of the funds, which means that we do not have much time to get the money out the door. So we have to work very quickly and put appropriate attention to these so we can get the funding out and programmed. The district will also continue to build on efforts over the past few years to identify and advance alternatives to the open burning of agricultural material. In June of 2021, your board adopted and CARB approved a strategy establishing the final framework for the phase out of agricultural open burning, the remaining open burning in the valley, including a timeline for the near complete phase out of agricultural burning by January 1st of 2025. Significant work will be necessary in the next fiscal year to work with stakeholders to implement and enforce the strategy, which prioritizes near-term reductions while taking into account the feasibility of alternatives across different crop sectors and categories. In fiscal year 2022-2023, new state and federal mandates will require expansion of both the federal regulatory air monitoring network, as well as the development and deployment of community-level monitoring networks associated with AB 617 communities, and also recent refinery monitoring legislation, which will require community monitoring around the refineries that we have here in the Valley. There will also be an emphasis at the state level to conduct additional air monitoring on prescribed burn projects, and the district will play a role in these efforts for projects within the Valley. The district also anticipates completing several exceptional event documentations in the coming years to help demonstrate that pollution episodes caused by wildfire and windblown dust events were beyond the scope and control of the district's comprehensive and stringent air quality management program. Each submittal takes thousands of hours of data gathering, analysis, and modeling to justify the EPA that these high pollution episodes should be excluded from our attainment demonstrations. And the documentation will be necessary for future clean data findings for the upcoming deadlines for the federal standards. As we have implemented the PM 2.5 plan and BARC commitments under AB 617, there are several new and existing rules which have been recently adopted by your board, which have upcoming compliance dates. These include rules affecting glass furnaces, biomass operations, industrial flares, boilers, engines, and agricultural open burning. Implementation will include significant compliance assistance, outreach, permitting, inspections, testing and monitoring, as well as plan and report reviews and other reporting requirements that will have to be, compliance will have to be ensured with. The district is also currently in the midst of a multi-year phased-in approach to comprehensively reassess the air toxic risk for all Valley facilities under the state's air toxic hotspots program to address the state OEHA's latest guidance changes. We are currently in phase 4 of this process with about 2,000 facilities requiring review and analysis in the upcoming fiscal year. The district will also be working hard over the next year to work with land management agencies to increase the use of prescribed fire and other fuel reduction efforts to reduce the frequency and magnitude of wildfires affecting the valley. There is a call for a dramatic increase in fuel reduction efforts and an expectation that air districts and CARB will work to facilitate prescribed fire projects while monitoring emissions from these burns to characterize and minimize impacts where feasible. As the public's desire for air quality information continues to grow, the district will be continuing to look for ways to enhance our public outreach and education strategies. We have long been a leader in providing high quality air quality information and guidance to Valley residents on how to help them make informed decisions about their level of outdoor activity on any given day. Over the past several years, there have been a new slew of air quality tools that have emerged, and the district will be evaluating these tools with the aim to help the public understand what information these tools are providing and how this information can best be used by them in guiding the decisions that they may be making. As the board has continued to enhance the district's residential wood burning reduction strategy, we have seen behaviors regarding residential wood burning evolve. It is important that the district continues, the district's outreach strategies around residential burning continue to evolve as well and stay current with the board's direction on the program. As such, during the next year, the district will be evaluating the current approach and make changes as necessary. It is also important to keep the district's Healthy Air Living Schools program fresh and relevant to the needs of schools throughout the valley. Over the next year, working with our program partners, we will be reevaluating the program, including the new factors and opportunities that are facing schools, including response to wildfire smoke and understanding the opportunities and challenges around air filtration systems in schools. Lastly, the significant outreach work will also be required to ensure participation in the district's voluntary incentive grant programs, and that participation remains high and those funds are fully utilized. Consistent with the board priorities in support of attainment efforts, the district will be working to design, oversee, and/or partner in execution of research studies in many different areas, such as the understanding of impacts and practices for fallowed lands and enhanced conservation management practices, understanding and supporting additional research to better characterize the changing PM 2.5 source apportionment within the valley. Also looking at evaluating the effectiveness of the valley's criteria pollutant and air toxic reduction strategies and the overall improvements to public health that those have brought. With that, I will now turn the presentation over to Ryan Hayashi to discuss the efficiency measures that will be deployed to aid in addressing the significant projected workload.
All right, thank you very much, Morgan. Good morning, Chair Chiesa, members of the board, Ryan Hayashi, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer. And today I have the pleasure of sharing with you some of the efficiency and customer service focused efforts that the district has implemented over the past year to continue to address the high volume of existing and new workload previously discussed by Morgan, all while ensuring we continue to provide the highest level of customer service that your board has established for our agency. Our management team, under your board's direction, has created an environment where employees not only can make suggestions for improvement, but we actually feel that it's an important part of their job to seek solutions to the challenges that they identify and to find streamlining and customer service opportunities to better serve their coworkers and the Valley residents. These efforts have resulted in thousands of streamlining and efficiency suggestions being made and implemented, which allows us to achieve the highest levels of productivity across all of our programs. One of the keys is training for our organization for these efficiency efforts. And towards that end, we do extensive staff cross-training within and outside of their departments to allow for maximum flexibility to handle the ever-changing and cyclical workload that we experience. Our personnel team utilizes a comprehensive computer program, which was conceived and programmed in-house to handle human resources related activities, which saves us enormous amounts of time through quality control and process automation, with enhancements being added routinely. The district has increased efforts to operate paperlessly across all of our departments, including internal paperless processing workflows and scanning all hard copies of documents that we receive. These efforts are possible due to our improved use of features in our electronic data management system software, which results in more documents being processed across all of our departments in less time. We receive thousands of public information requests each year, and electronic handling and tracking processes that we've instituted. It provides for extensive, in addition to this, we have extensive levels of information which we provide on our website, which satisfies many of those requests. Additionally, we've transitioned to electronic processing of the majority of our district documents, such as requisitions, claims for payment, permit applications, hearing board packets, and public notice packages, which has also reduced our processing and handling times. Over the last several years, we've devoted significant resources in expanding our community engagement efforts. As part of these efforts, especially as part of implementing the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program, numerous engagement tools have been used to facilitate and improve community discussion and increase engagement by allowing a more interactive process. Communication with our stakeholders is essential, and we continue to look for ways to better outreach and engage with the public, including working with the district's Environmental Justice Advisory Group, improvements to the district's website, use of social media, and most recently through the new public notification software, GovDelivery, to manage the district's email list, which has simplified the process for signing up for notifications of meetings, workshops, and other public events, all with the focus of making information more accessible to a greater audience. The district's community engagement efforts have involved considerable need for Spanish translation. To address this need, we've created new tools to provide that level of service to our customers. Being able to expend hundreds of millions of dollars requires program evaluation to find more opportunities to refine and improve processes, and several other measures that we've implemented over the last year include making improvements to the district's grant management system. It's the in-house tool, the software that manages all the grants that we process, including enhancements to the internal controls and project monitoring, and streamlining the claim processing for faster payments to applicants. We've expanded automation of the grant process through new technology, including filing and uploading online applications. We've used electronic and digital document routing and signatures, which results in quicker processing of the grant contracts due to less time waiting for the contracts to be returned. We've refined the application templates, the boilerplate contracts, and supporting forms to increase efficiency and consistency. We're continually reevaluating the existing grant programs to ensure the programs run as efficiently as possible. And in some cases, this has resulted in switching from contract-based to voucher and rebate processes when possible. We've also developed new program guidelines and materials to ensure the diverse grant programs through which we expend existing and new funding sources, with the district often piloting programs that have then been used as the model for similar programs across the state and the nation. For our air monitoring, we've deployed sonic wind speed measuring devices throughout the regulatory air network, which reduces our time spent on meteorological repairs and calibrations, which are required for the mechanical type of anemometers. We've transitioned to filter-based particulate matter monitoring to real time, which enhances our air quality forecasting and reporting, which benefits Valley residents through more timely air quality data. We've reduced time to manage filter media and laboratory processes with other agencies, allowing the district to reallocate staffing resources to other priorities. We've also deployed cameras at the regulatory air monitoring site, which allows us to see what's going on in the areas if we're seeing readings that seem abnormal. We've also implemented a parts and supplies inventory management program, which allows for closer tracking of the monitoring supplies and needs for ongoing network maintenance and repair, which leads to quicker repair times and more data availability. We've also developed a forecasting system program, which results in the air quality forecasting analysis efficiency to bring the regulatory and community air monitoring processes together. As part of the district's ongoing implementation of paper reduction and streamlining efforts, several opportunities were implemented, including enhanced district online payment portal for businesses and residents, which allows facilities to view outstanding invoices and to make online payment via e-checks, debit cards, and credit cards. We've added electronic processing of accounts payable, grants claims, and payments, payroll, and other finance-related transactions, which reduce our staff costs and result in quicker processing. We have new payroll administrator, which provides more customization features, which allows for improved efficiency and data integrity, which is very important to us. During the COVID-19 crisis, numerous enhancements were made to the district systems to ensure continued essential services to Valley stakeholders through our web resources, electronic workflows, telework, and other engagement tools. We have a widespread use of project management tools by all departments to track and assign our work, improving project oversight and tracking. We have air quality, we instituted air quality forecasting and compliance staff, which are transitioned to using the state's fire incident reporting program, which simplifies the process for improving communication with federal, state, and private land managers. We expanded our use of GIS-based tools to view and understand data and manage various programs related to permits, compliance, and incentives. As was mentioned earlier, the district's enforcement program conducts tens of thousands of inspections and complaint investigations each year, and to be able to complete this amount of work, we have to constantly evaluate the existing processes. Recently, we have implemented measures to increase inspection capacity by reducing the time necessary for associated paperwork, including online and smartphone complaint portal system, which allows photos and videos that are being taken by reporting parties to be directly uploaded into our systems. And once those are received by us, then our inspectors receive alerts, which they can then go out directly and investigate, reducing the response time. We have improvements to our inspector dashboard, which allows completion and uploading of our inspection reports directly in the field, which reduces our paperwork processing time. We have paperless processing of our dust control plans and asbestos records, which eliminates the need for people to come into the office, drop off required notifications to us. And we also benefit through reduced scanning needs by our district staff. During the pandemic, we began performing virtual grant and portable equipment inspections, which we heard positive feedback from stakeholders that worked with us on those efforts. We also have extensive use of electronic signatures on compliance reports and electronic transfer of these documents as part of our electronic and no print initiatives. We're continuing to evaluate the latest in technology, and we recently purchased new exhaust gas analyzers. These are pieces of equipment that we actually measure the emissions from combustion sources while as part of our inspection to make sure that they're complying with their emission limits. We also use forward-looking infrared cameras, which allows us to see emissions coming, which allows us to see volatile organic compound emissions from things like oil and gas equipment, gas stations, landfills, and things of that nature. We also use the latest in technology for the volatile organic compound analyzers. All of this is done to ensure that the equipment are meeting their the limits that they're required to meet by district rules. We also, as an organization, believe that while compliance and going out and doing inspections is very important, we also feel it's important to make sure that the community knows what the rules, what the requirements are. So through these efforts, we hope to avoid potential non-compliance situations. And so towards that end, we use extensively a compliance assistance bulletin to help educate the Valley residents and businesses. And we also have email listservs, which I described a little bit earlier, where people can receive all the latest information from us. The district's permitting department identified numerous opportunities to improve their processes and customer service through permit processing enhancements, which includes new application forms, which are tailored for prohibitory rule compliance projects that combine emission control plan and authority to construct requirements into one streamlined application, which provides clear direction to applicants resulting in a higher level of complete applications received, reducing the need to request information from the applicant, new and tailored engineering evaluation templates for each rule, ensuring complete, thorough, and efficient review of projects received, proactive updates to district's best available control technology clearinghouse, which not only ensures most stringent and latest emissions control requirements, but provides clear guidance to Valley residents or businesses, allowing for more efficient processing for staff. On the air toxics and emission inventory side, several enhancements have been made, including improvements to the district's permit administrative system program for processing of facility plans, reports, and prioritizations, templates for toxic emission inventory plans to ensure consistency amongst several facility types. The district has led the effort to develop statewide guidance and assessment tools for emergency diesel engines and created automated internal electronic forms to increase processing efficiency. And we've created gasoline dispensing facility prioritization tools to automatically prioritize and calculate screening health risk based on data received. Lastly, in regards to the district's indirect source review, several enhancements that have been made, including we've developed improvements in the program. It's the district's indirect source review program, or ISR, for processing air impact analyses. We've launched a new ISR web portal that allows developers to check the status of their pending projects at any time, reducing staff time on phone calls, emails, and meetings. We have been continuing to develop additional features in the ISR web portal, including an application submittal feature, which ensures immediate receipt of developer applications and automatically logs the projects into the ISR database. And we're currently working on additional enhancements to the portal to feature new interfaces and tools that are designed to help applicants and district staff determine ISR applicability. So after the extensive zero-based budgeting process, which include an analysis of existing and new workload and the streamlining and efficiency opportunities available, the district is proposing several staff enhancements, with the majority being position reclassifications, which we see as a need to prevent potential bottlenecking from the greater volume of workload discussed earlier by Morgan. In addition to these reclassifications, we are also recommending a new manager in the permitting department, which will be needed to address several new state mandates and to ensure the continued high level of customer service to Valley stakeholders. There's also an addition for an air quality specialist to assist in the district's expanding community engagement efforts across the Valley, and 4 air quality specialists, which will provide needed support to address the significant increase in grant funding and to ensure that we can continue to provide the high level of customer service your board and Valley stakeholders have come to expect from us. Ryan Buchanan will be talking about the fiscal impacts of these proposed changes later in the presentation. And at this point, I'll turn over the presentation to Shiraz to talk to you about the incentives-based strategies. Thank you.
Good morning. Now I'm going to shift gears here and talk about the district's incentive funding plan with a little over $563 million in this year's upcoming incentive programs. First, I will go over the district's incentive-based strategies. One of the major focus of our programs is to achieve the greatest emission reductions through all of our programs in the most expeditious and cost-effective manner. Your board has always promoted that we be efficient with our incentive programs and that we allow for timely access to that funding. We have a very large area to cover, 25,000 square miles, and we want to ensure that we conduct equal outreach to all of the regions in the Valley. We also want to promote and provide the best customer service by being flexible within our funding deadlines. We also want to make sure that we get what we call SIP, creditable emission reductions, that we get the maximum credit of reductions for our programs towards our federal obligations under our state implementation plan requirements. We also want to make sure that we seek all opportunities to leverage other funds and promote as much partnerships as possible so we can stretch the reach of our dollars and programs and make them as effective as possible. As we develop incentive programs, your board has developed some key factors in distributing funds. Cost effectiveness is a driving factor in the way we design our programs. We want to get the most reductions possible for every single dollar that we spend. It is important that we also understand the inventory of projects that we have in the Valley so that we can design our programs effectively and go after the projects more efficiently. There are also a lot of statutory funding constraints that come with these grant funds, type of projects you can fund, administrative requirements, eligibility requirements, expenditure deadlines, and other guidelines that must be met. Another key factor is regulatory deadlines. To ensure that the district's incentive programs obtain the maximum SIP creditable emission reductions, a thorough analysis of all regulations is performed. In addition, the district works proactively to understand the potential impacts of these regulations on incentive projects and to ensure that opportunities for early incentives fundings are maximized. Health benefits is another factor that we look at. A good example is our school bus program. It isn't the most cost-effective program, but it gets emission reductions for most sensitive individuals, such as children and their exposure to toxic diesel exhaust emissions. Your board has also placed a huge priority in advancing technology, given that we need significant emission reductions here in the Valley. Through our technology advancement program, we are always looking for those cutting-edge technologies that will get us further emission reductions. Lots of money being put into some of these projects. For example, we have that Pepsi Frito-Lay Modesto Zero and Near Zero emission project, freight facility project with 56 electric vehicles total. That's trucks, tractors, smart charging, energy storage. So a lot of work in this area. Your board has an environmental justice policy in place that prioritizes bringing funds to disadvantaged communities to the extent feasible. We go through a process every year with our environmental justice advisory group that go through and help us prioritize where the funding needs to go. As I go through my slides, you'll see where the environmental justice advisory group has made recommendations in our spending plan. In addition, through AB 617, we will be working closely with the community steering committees to implement our community emission reduction programs. And through this process, we've seen overall that the distribution of funds follow closely with population in the Valley and where we see our key sources. Now I'll briefly go over our incentive spending plan. So first on the community incentive programs, these are targeted at Valley residents. Our Burn Cleaner program, a high priority program for the Valley with $10.3 million in funding. Drive Clean in the San Joaquin Valley, which is a combination of the Clean Vehicles Rebate Program, Vehicle Replacement Program, and Tune In Tune Up program with a total of $46.1 million. Our Commercial Lawn and Garden and Residential Clean Green Yard Machine program, I got to slow down when I say that, which facilitates the transition to zero emissions equipment, is funded at $1 million and $620,000 respectively, and $500,000 in our bicycle lane infrastructure program. The heavy duty diesel programs are a huge priority for us for over $264 million in our spending plan. The Ag Equipment Replacement Program has been an ongoing and very heavily funded program with $188 million. We see a big allocation with the farmer funding. The truck replacement program with cleaner trucks, you'll note $21.1 million in this program. Alternative fueling infrastructure, as we see electric fuel cells and other cleaner fuels come on the market, we have to make sure that clean fueling infrastructure is available. This program is funded at $19 million. We continue to fund locomotive projects, which are very cost-effective projects at $6.2 million. Electric ag irrigation pump engine replacement funded at $3 million. Low dust nut harvester equipment to replacement to reduce fugitive dust emissions during harvest is funded at $2 million. Electric yard trucks, $4.2 million. Electric ag utility train vehicles, we have seen a great demand for this program and are funded at $10 million. And the dairy feed electric mixer electrification is a huge success and still a lot of demand. So we have $9 million towards that program. Now, shifting gears in our spending plan to the advanced transportation of vehicles, a variety of programs we offer to the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. The district is administrating a program on a statewide basis for electric transit, school buses, and shuttle bus replacement with $20.9 million in funding being made available for these projects. Public benefit grants where we partner with cities and counties and other public agencies to pursue clean transportation projects is at $10 million. Charge Up program to invest the EV infrastructure has $4 million in funding, and alternatives ag open burning, which has been a very successful program at $89.5 million. And we have allocated close to $1 million for technology advancement projects, as those types of projects are going to be critical in the San Joaquin Valley. And Wildfire Smoke Cleaner Centers Program is a new pilot program that was recently approved by your board to prioritize funding for the purchase and deployment of portable air cleaners at a little over $700,000. The spending plan also includes your board-approved allocations and community emissions reduction programs for South Central Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton, and with about $51.5 million in total allocations. Now, wide variety of programs. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but in community incentives, heavy-duty equipment and community sources, and advanced transportation of vehicles. So a number of different programs in there. Your board also recently approved a valley-wide electric school bus program with $30 million allocated to that program, and allocations for additional community air protection funding of $33.1 million, which will be received later this year, will be established by your governing board through future actions and guidance. The serve for the new community for Arbin and Lamont will be considered by your board in mid-2022. And this funding is also eligible for use in low-income disadvantaged communities throughout the valley. And that does conclude my presentation, and I will turn it over to Ryan Buchanan to talk about revenue and expenditure details. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. At this point, I'll go over the details of the proposed budget and the changes as it compares to last year. First, I'll explain the operating revenues and operating appropriations, and then I'll present the non-operating budget at the end. In your handout, you are provided copies of a 4-page budget summary reports. Page 1 provides you with the revenue and appropriation summary. Page 2 provides the revenue details. Operating revenue on the top and non-operating revenue on the bottom, and operating appropriations are on the 3rd page. And non-operating appropriations are summarized on the 4th page. The district budget process is governed by the California Health and Safety Code. The district has notification requirements, which are 2 public hearings. The first hearing is today, May 19th, and is to allow for public comments. The second hearing is scheduled for June 16th, which the budget will be presented for adoption. In addition to the Health and Safety Code, the district budget process is governed by the District Administrative Code. The District Admin Code requires the APCO to present the recommended budget to your board prior to June 30th. Your board adopts a budget resolution at the object level, except for fixed assets that are controlled at the sub-object level. Object level for the district are salaries and benefits and services and supplies. Capital expenditures are budgeted at a sub-object level, such as computer equipment and automobiles. Your board has left the APCO discretion to transfer budget between accounts, which the board adopts a budget resolution at the object level except for fixed assets. Board approves any transfers between object levels and fixed assets, and the executive director can transfer between accounts within the objects. All right. This chart gives you a high-level overview of the fiscal year 2022-23 budget. From the $644.3 million total recommended appropriations, the district operating budget is $70.9 million, or 11%, and $564 million represent the non-operating budget. The operating budget is dedicated to the district's internal operating costs for achieving its mission. Operating costs include staffing, services and supplies, and fixed assets. The non-operating budget represents incentives that the district provides in the form of grants for voluntary emission reductions. If you wish to follow along on your budget documents, I'll be going over the operating revenues on the first half of page 2 in your handouts, with focus on the recommended 22-23 column towards the middle of the page. The estimated permit fees for the fiscal year 22-23 is estimated at $20 million, which is about $1.3 million higher than what it was budgeted for this year. Projected revenues for 22-23 is conservatively estimated based on the actual revenues received this year. The district is expecting additional revenues due to permit modifications to comply with recently adopted district rules. The district will also receive the biannual Conservation Management Plan fees, known as CMP fees. CMP fees are billed every other year and total about $500,000 each year collected. Section 185 federal non-attainment penalties apply to certain major stationary sources and is estimated to be $300,000. Advanced Emission Reduction Option, or AERO fees, is applied to facilities with boilers, steam generators, process heaters, in addition to stringent regulations, and in support of accelerating the deployment of advanced control technologies. We expect to receive $4.6 million in AERO fees. Mitigation fees, penalties, and settlements are expected to be $7.4 million and are made up of fees from regulations, penalties, and major stationary sources, as well as settlements. Interest revenue is expected to be $1.5 million, which Fresno County Treasury handles the district's fund investments and provides for very competitive interest earnings. Residential furnace penalty is estimated to be $150,000 under the district's ongoing implementation of furnace regulation and based on the last remaining compliance deadline for manufactured homes. Now, moving on to operating grants. These operating grants help the district to maintain air monitoring stations, deploy air quality plans, develop rules, support enforcement, permitting, and public outreach. State Subvention EPA 105 and EPA 103 operating grants are not expected to change as compared to this year. We expect to receive $12.7 million in a state AB 617 implementation grant to support the district's implementation of state mandates under AB 617, and this funding is included in the state's current approved budget. Next, Dmv fees used for operating costs are estimated to be $13 million, which is very similar to what is budgeted for this year. Grant administrative funds earned is estimated at $9.5 million. These fees are received from state and federal government on the non-operating side and then reimbursed to the operating side for costs associated with incentive program administration, such as farmer, community air protection, Moyer, and other grant funds. Every year, the district transfers money from the non-operating budget to fund emission reduction projects. This recommended budget includes a transfer of $5 million to support incentive program implementation. This budget includes use of $16.1 million of district fund balance. The district budget represents the annual cash flow of revenues and expenditures for that fiscal year. Some revenues may provide funding for more than one fiscal year. These funds are set aside in the district fund balance and used to fund district operating costs shown in budget as fund balance used, which includes setting aside $8.7 million in reserves, which I will provide more detailed information related to the district reserves in a later slide. Now I'll be taking you through the operating expenditures in this year's budget, located on the third page of your handout. This slide summarizes the changes in the operating budget at the object level. If you refer to your handout, the numbers I'm showing here on the budget to budget are in the budget to budget comparison column. This column shows the difference from last year's adjusted budget to this year's recommended budget for each account. With a total at the bottom of each object level, this slide is showing the budget to budget comparison for the total of the three object levels in our operating budget. The proposed operating budget shows a 7% increase compared to last year's adjusted budget. And as you can see from the slide in your handout, salaries and benefits in total are up to $2.3 million. Service and supplies are up about $1.4 million, and fixed asset accounts are up $910,000. In the next few slides, we'll go over the changes in each of these object levels in more detail. So district salaries and benefits expenditures in the recommended budget total $57 million and make up about 81% of the total operating budget. This slide details the changes from last year's adjusted budget for salaries and benefits object levels. Starting with regular salaries, which reflect the second year of the labor agreement and projected merit steps increases for existing staff. This increase also accounts for full year appropriations for recently added positions approved by your board, as well as proposed staffing enhancements in the new year, which I'll be discussing in more detail on the next slide. The next line reflects the district's temporary help positions being proposed. The district uses temporary help for situations where work and/or funding is short-term in nature. Most temporary support is used for the district's incentive programs. The increase in this account represents the additional use of temporary staffing resources. Overtime represents hourly estimates which are based on departmental needs and established deadlines which require overtime for the completion of key assignments. On-call pay is budgeted at $119,000, which is consistent with the prior year. Unemployment rates increased by 0.2%, so our budget estimate for this account increased by $4,900 from the prior year. The next line describes the change to the district's retirement costs. The change here reflects the increase in retirement costs due to the implementation of the labor agreement for staff and an increase in employer contribution rate by Casera, resulting in a total increase of $742,000. OASDI increase can be attributed to the increase in required contribution amount as well as the proposed staffing changes. Workers' compensation expenses are reflecting an increase of $16,000 due to a rate change by our insurance carrier, and the district continues to participate in proactive risk management and loss prevention programs. The $150,000 increase for the cafeteria plan benefits is related to staffing adjustments included in the budget. Long-term disability insurance increased by $5,000, and alternative transportation incentive increased in the new year due to enhanced telecommuting and staffing adjustments included in the budget. So this is the fiscal impact to the position changes that were mentioned earlier by Ryan Hayashi. And this slide represents proposed changes in positions for the upcoming year, with the fiscal impact of these positions of $781,000 for the 22-23 budgeted year. Now moving on to services and supplies. Overall, the total services and supplies are up $1.4 million or 19% compared to the 21-22 adjusted budget. Many of these accounts can see significant year-to-year variations, and on this slide I'll be explaining those accounts which have had significant changes. Starting with mobile communications, which is up $22,680. This increase is the result of the district staffing adjustment mentioned earlier and the support of AB 617 communities and air monitoring. Telephone charges is up $38,368, this increase reflects technical and maintenance services in support of the district's new phone system. Insurance is up $140,400. This increase is due to the district's acquiring more vehicles and air monitoring equipment in the current fiscal year in support of the district's air quality programs. Vehicle maintenance and operation is up $20,765. And this increase in the account is mainly due to the recent increases in gas, but as the district continues to transition to a full electric fleet, this account should see decreases in the near future. Computer maintenance is up 63%. The increase in this account is due to the continued investment in applications to support the district's air quality tools for accurate information to be provided to residents and businesses of the Central Valley. Examples of these important tools include geographic information system software and tools for converting the district's custom software into the latest supported software packages. Office supplies is down $7,988, and this decrease in this account is due to the district's continued effort to move to digital work processing, reducing the need for traditional office supplies. Computer software and supplies is up $70,408. The budget includes funding to provide district staff resources for enhanced project management that will be utilized across all district programs, improving tracking and accountability. The budget also includes software for governing board agenda management and public records requests. Monitoring station supplies and equipment is up $158,400. This increase is due to the need to continued high investment in high quality air monitoring in response to new state mandates, including air monitoring research projects to assist the district with evaluating, collecting air quality information, and enhancing emission reduction strategy development. Additionally, this account includes laboratory services for analysis for air monitoring field samples for PM 2.5, toxics, and VOC speciation, as well as parts and consumables for support of maintenance of equipment operating in community air monitoring networks. The last item on this slide, professional and specialized services, is up $599,985. And this is where you'll find a majority of our service contract agreements, and it tends to vary sometimes significantly due to the normal fluctuations that occur as scheduled projects begin and end. I have another slide that will list the major contracts associated with this account. Starting with the multilingual marketing and outreach contract. It represents a comprehensive multimedia marketing responsible for the district's highly successful educational outreach campaign. This outreach is designed to generate public interest in support of our air quality improvement programs and thereby affect meaningful change in public behaviors. Public engagement services for AB 617. As discussed previously, the district continues to work with the selected communities in the Valley to prepare and attend community steering committee meetings. The recommended budget includes $670,000 to provide the level of support needed to implement effective public engagement for communities under the AB 617. Next, we have $200,000 budgeted to support Valley-based air quality research to help inform strategy development. We also have the district mobile app, which the district continuously looks for effective ways to enhance its outreach and communication to the public and our air quality programs to ensure that they are effective in advancing the district's mission and objectives, including promoting increased understanding and behavioral changes with the Valley public, shown here at $160,000. Community outreach services for AB 617 reflects resources to provide the necessary outreach services in support of AB 617, including interpretation, document translation, marketing of programs, outreach, mini grants, and supporting public events for a total of $142,100. And lastly is the socioeconomic analysis for rural development. This is consistent with your board's direction. The district evaluates potential economic impacts of rules as they are being developed to ensure thoughtful and complete deliberation on what can be very closely regulations with the amount of $100,000 included for this purpose. Next, we'll take a look at our planned capital spending. Like our professional and specialized services account, the capital accounts vary sometimes significantly due to the normal progression of various projects at the beginning and end of one year to the next. And as you will see on page 3 of your handout, our total fixed assets are showing a $910,000 increase compared to last year's adjusted budget. So as I did with services and supplies, I'll be going over the accounts that are experiencing the most significant changes from the previous year's budget in this object class. Starting with office improvements, which is down $110,000. This capital account is budgeted to support the improvement of 3 regional offices and fluctuates from year to year as the projects are completed. Facilities and equipment is also down $156,000. And this account represents necessary improvements to the district offices and is budgeted to make sure necessary operations such as HVAC units are maintained in order to keep a safe work environment. The computer equipment has increased by $117,000. We have current projects budgeted for this year that include modeling system storage upgrade at $500,000 and field staff smartphones at $99,900. Next, we have office machines, which is decreased by 51%. The decrease in this account is reflected by the continuous effort to move toward processing digital and no more needed to replace or maintain the digital copiers located in all 3 district offices. The telephone systems has decreased by $9,750, and the decrease in this account is represented by a one-time expense in updating the district's audio conference system capabilities in the previous budget. Detection equipment has also decreased by $17,003. This account varies from year to year, depending on the detection equipment purchase for use by our compliance department. The change to the automobile account reflects continued replacement of existing high mileage vehicles as we look into transitioning the district's fleet to electric and feasible vehicles in the market. The increase is due to our accelerated goal of replacing more vehicles to transition to electric fleet. Lastly is video teleconferencing, which is increased by $1 million. This account represents the need to upgrade the district's aging video teleconferencing hardware and system to ensure reliable meeting services given the 15-year age of the current system and to better handle business needs through enhanced capabilities, including online conferences such as Zoom.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question about that last one?
Yes.
I want to, it's a big item. So I just want to highlight, you know, they're probably quantifiable air quality and emission benefits that we could identify in something like the video conferencing. Because I know for myself, when COVID was intense and we were doing more of this virtually, it saved a lot of transportation, a lot of time on the road, as well as the emissions. And I wonder about recognizing that, the value of that.
Mr. Chair and board members, that's an excellent point, and I think when as that project sort of materializes, it's a good opportunity for highlighting that. In fact, the board has in the past, and we've made available funding to other public agencies to help them transition to online systems and video teleconferencing in the past as well. And as part of those efforts, we also do it because of those quantifiable air quality benefits. So as this project sort of moves forward, pending obviously board consideration and approval, ultimately, that is something absolutely that we would want to highlight as a part of that.
It's a huge investment, but it accomplishes so much in terms of accessibility for public outreach and reaching people who might otherwise have difficulty attending meetings, participating, and again, the air quality benefits. And worth thinking about how we can quantify.
Not a problem. Okay, and in continuing to follow the board's approved green procurement policy, the district is in the process of transitioning to a electric fleet with the target of fully transitioning by 2025-26 fiscal year. Consistent with your board's expectations and recent discussion about this strategy at last month's board meeting, this rapid transition will establish the district as a model for other agencies throughout the valley and nation. The district has piloted the testing of electric vehicles through the compliance inspectors, and it has been successful in all three regions. The recommended automobile appropriation reflects the district's goal of transitioning 50% of the fleet to electric vehicles through funding included in the recommended budget. To successfully implement this goal, there are a number of key considerations that district staff will continually evaluate. First, it's important to recognize the cost savings from reduced fuel and maintenance costs through this transition to electric vehicles. Currently estimated at approximately $1,200 cost savings per vehicle annually. Always ensuring the fleet is designed in a manner that provides all necessary services to businesses, public residents, and employees. And as part of this consideration, ensuring that vehicle range and charging needs are fully understood and all options are considered. And lastly, as I'm sure everyone is more aware of, paying close attention to the supply chain costs and timing availability of these new vehicles. And now the non-operating sources here. This slide summarizes the non-operating budget. In one table, you may want to refer to the fourth page of the budget handout and the financial summary entitled Non-Operating Appropriations. The first column from the left identifies estimated reserves at year end for inclusion into the recommended budget, and the second or middle column provides detail on new revenues. As you can see, provided for a total appropriation of $564 million in funding for the 22-23 recommended non-operating budget. The district non-operating revenues tend to vary substantially year over year depending on the availability and timing of funding. Each one of these funding sources has specific requirements on how and what type of projects they can be used for. And as you've heard earlier, Shiraz explained how these funds will be utilized to reduce emissions through the various programs included in the incentive spending plan. To summarize these revenues, the first line is the pass-through portion of the air toxics fees collected by the district on behalf of the state and then sent to CARB annually, which is estimated at $180,000. DMV surcharge fees is expected to be $65 million. These funds are used for a wide variety of district emission reduction incentives, such as district public benefits grants, tune-in, tune-up program, truck replacement, ag equipment replacement, and technology advancement programs. The district's allocation for the Caramoyo program is at $16 million. Voluntary emission reduction agreement and indirect source revenues mitigation fees is estimated to be $13 million. And these fees are provided by project proponents who ask the district for assistance with mitigating air quality impacts for ISR and CEQA purposes. The district anticipates on receiving $24.8 million in federal DERA, targeted airshed, and other federally funded emission reduction programs, which were awarded to the district for replacement of residential wood burning devices, ag tractors, low dust nut harvesting equipment, and technology advancement projects. Non-operating interest is estimated to be $9.7 million. This is the interest earned on the state and federal funds and varies depending on the balance and timing that these funds will be received and spent. These funds are spent on emission reduction projects in accordance with each program's requirements and guidelines. So basically, the interest follows the principal. As mentioned earlier, $5 million of operating funds are transferred to the non-operating budget to be spent on emission reduction projects. And you see two lines of administrative revenue listed here. One of the administrative fees received from federal, state, and government to fund administrative costs for the grants and incentives. And these funds may apply to more than 1 year, so unused portion is banked in a reserved account. The admin fees received are earned when the district spends time and resources on administration of these programs. We anticipate to receive $8.4 million in new administrative and new admin. Some of this amount is addition to other funds previously received from the districts totaling $9.5 million that will be transferred to the general fund. Based on already approved state allocations, we expect to receive over $105.5 million in ARB cap and trade. And these grants will be used to replace heavy and light duty vehicles, truck and ag equipment replacement, and purchasing electric buses. So now onto the general reserve policy. In 2007, your board adopted the district's general reserve policy for maintaining no less than 10% of operating revenues in reserves, which was based on the Governmental Financial Officers Association recommendation of 5 to 15%. These reserves are established to ensure that the operations and services are maintained during potential time of financial instability, such as revenue shortfall and anticipated expenditures. The district is recommending an increase of the board adopted policy to 20%, which is now consistent with the updated GFOA and other large districts recommendations. Any future use of the reserve funds will be presented to your board for approval. And the proposed balanced budget includes adequate reserves and contingencies as listed here. These reserves are listed at the bottom of the first page of your handout. Based on the recommended general reserve policy of 20% of the district's ongoing operating appropriation, the reserve would be established at $14.2 million in the 22-23 budget. The district building improvement reserve is increasing by $500,000 to support future projects such as needed roof replacement and future installation of solar panels in the central office. To provide necessary funding for future replacement of the district's state-of-the-art modeling center, the district has been setting aside funding in a designated reserve for the future replacement of age modeling equipment necessary to support the Valley's Clean Air Act attainment efforts. We are proposing no change in this reserve currently. Consistent with state mandates for refinery-related community air monitoring and associated revenues for offsetting related costs, there is a recommended increase of $50,000 to the monitoring equipment reserve as needed for future replacement of community air monitoring equipment. And your board has established a pension stabilization reserve fund. Following your board's established policy, the recommended budget includes setting aside the required amount of $900,000 into this reserve, bringing the total reserve to $5.4 million. As in years past, in addition to the above mentioned reserve, this budget contains $850,000 appropriation for contingency. In the event that the district needs to use the contingency funds or any of the reserves mentioned, your board will need to amend the budget to move these funds to an appropriate budgetary account. And this includes my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Samir for his final comments.
So just, Mr. Chair, board members, wanted to just thank the team for all the work on the budget this year. And again, the subcommittee for having heard these details prior to this presentation. And again, today, just to remind the board today, there is no action on the budget. It's really solely for the purpose of receiving public comments. And of course, if the board were to have any questions or comments, this would be a great opportunity for that as well. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair and board members, for discussion, and to the public for commenting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments, questions from board members? Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the presenters. Thank you. Fortunately, I didn't have to sit on the budget committee, so I don't have to hear it 3 times this year. With respect to AB 617, you know, it was a mandated, program that came outside the boundaries of, this organization. How are we doing in confining the cost, of that program within the mandated or the funding stream?
That's going well from a cost perspective, but I'll give you a bigger picture as well. Great question, Supervisor. So we annually receive about over $12 million per year from the state to cover the cost of implementing the program. So it's a pretty significant amount of funding, but it's also a very significant amount of work, as you saw throughout the presentation. The costs are fully covered by the state funds. The ongoing issue is something we pay very close attention to, and that we, as reflected in this budget, do continue to see in the state budget is this question around the reliability of the funding and making sure that there's always ongoing funding for the program. So the funding has been there. It is there in the current state budget, and it's also there now and you'll hear a little bit about this later in the other item. It's also there in the proposed budget, again, for the new state budget year. So the revenues are there, the costs are within those revenues, but it's always an ongoing thing that we pay very close attention to as far as how it's reflected in the budget and making sure that those costs are there. There's also effort to have continuous appropriation of those funds in the state budgeting process. So that element is no longer an issue or a concern. And it's actually, that's a live discussion in the legislature this cycle to have that actually just be set up as a continuous funding source.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just on that line of discussion, that, you know, I just saw an article, the state legislative analyst is predicting a budget shortfall as early as next year. So you know, get ready for, you know, some big changes. I think all this effort on social spending over the last couple of years is we're going to see where people's priorities are, I guess, and how they fund it. And then the second question, I've had this discussion before, but you know, you see attempts in the state legislature to change the traditional working order of a board like this, and I continue to be concerned about, you know, we have a great message to tell, and I think we need to tell it more often. Clearly, some folks don't believe that you know, the value of this board is in, you know, putting the power to the people locally and changing those things. And I just think that we need to continue to remember that, you know, we've done a lot of good work over the last many years of you know, the life of this organization, and we can't be limited on how we tell that story to the public because it's easy to forget. So that's my, thank you.
Very good. Supervisor Pereira?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, you know, that's a tremendous amount of work that you and your staff have done, and thank you, and I appreciate it, and thank you for laying it out so succinct for us. A couple of thoughts came to mind, and they're not 100% budget related, but I guess ultimately they will be if so. You know, when we look at switching over to zero emissions lawn equipment, you know, I know that like in the fireplace realm, we get citizens call in complaints, right? And then we go out and take a look. And it got me to thinking, could we do that same thing with smoking lawnmowers to try to empower our citizens to help us? And then what would really make that a neat program, if that could work, is that we would have zero emission equipment on hand and could go right to the source and make the swap out. I don't know if something that simple and effective would be possible, but just a thought. And it could either be with landscapers or, you know, your neighbor, I guess. Your thoughts?
Mr. Chair, I think you said you might have had a few things, but do you want me to respond quickly here on this one and kind of keep going down the list, or?
Yes.
We'll leave it at, okay, great. Yeah, no, I definitely jotted that down as a note for us to evaluate. And I do think that in that space around where the landscapers are going to be heading with the new rule that was adopted by the state, there's actually going to be a phase out of the sale of combustion equipment in a couple of years. And so there's just a massive conversation going on right now around the availability of this equipment. How do you get it in more people's hands so they're more comfortable with the equipment? I do anticipate in the future that there's going to be opportunities, maybe it's forums and summits and other things that are accessible to landscapers and others that are kind of looking at these issues right now, where we can talk about these types of things. I think it's a great idea. I think we need to figure out a way to sort of integrate that into what's probably going to be a big discussion kind of around, how do we respond to these different things, the complaint side, but also just we really need a lot more early adopters of this technology too. And I am seeing it now, by the way. There's been a lot of conversation just recently about this. So great. I jotted that down, and definitely we'll keep the board updated on that. I think it's a great thing to pursue, or to evaluate at least and see if there's a feasible way to make that happen.
Yeah. And then my second point is, I've raised at previous meetings that, we have this push to switch out to electric vehicles, not necessarily from our standpoint, but statewide. And I'm just concerned that the infrastructure is not going to keep up. And so we're going to have vehicles that we may not be able to use, right? So I don't know if the solution is, some battery backup on our side. But hydrogen fuels is also a technology that's coming along. And so anyways, I would just like us to, as an agency, take a look at the two technologies side by side. And if there's enough value in the hydrogen fuel side that, maybe we lobby the state to get more funding in that area, because I think a balanced approach makes more sense to me than all eggs in one basket. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just wanted to clarify and reiterate and absolutely agree with the Supervisor comments that when we think about fuels, hydrogen fuels are absolutely a part of the equation. So, for example, like under the Alternative Fuel Grant Program that we're talking about there, we're actually interested in helping to also build out the hydrogen fueling infrastructure, and through our truck grant program, would also be interested in deploying those trucks. And on the light duty side, if there were actually if there was enough infrastructure and vehicles available, say for our own fleet, that absolutely would be something that we would also be taking a look at as well. So it's not as clearly sort of, when we talk about zero emission vehicles and we talk about in our context electric vehicles, really just more from what's available today as far as infrastructure and vehicle. But the broader picture on zero emissions and technology does definitely include hydrogen, and you actually are seeing some major opportunities potentially with, say, heavy duty trucking and forklifts and a bunch of other applications where that would actually be a very viable option. Just wanted to reiterate and just provide a little bit more info on that. Appreciate that comment.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. The fuel refueling sites are just limited in the valley. I believe Kalinga has the only one. Yeah, but there's kind of right now the state is kind of looking at expanding that opportunity. And so if it's a viable, from an air pollution standpoint, if it's a viable option, then, we really should try to help facilitate that. I heard Leanne Eager, the chairwoman of the CTC, California Transportation Commission, mention hydrogen fuels 2 times in the last 2 weeks. And so I know it's on her radar, and now may be the opportunity for us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Preciado?
Yes.
Good. Red light's on. You're on.
Okay, yeah, the question that I have is regarding the car replacement program. So I did notice that, now newer cars can be replaced. I believe it's 07 since 2007. Yeah, the model year was expanded. So the question is, how long does it take for a resident or a community member to submit the application and get it approved? And also, the funding, is it enough, or there's always like a waiting list for people that are waiting? And also, is it been to the records, the replacement program is staying in specific counties, or it's been through the whole valley?
Great question. So yeah, in the Drive Clean San Joaquin program, one of the major elements of the program is the replacement program, which is predominantly funded by the state's, what they call Clean Cars for All. That's the state sort of terminology for the funding. And then we use it in our Drive Clean and the San Joaquin program. And that program has been growing substantially, and part of that growth, we've ramped it up as we've also seen state funding ramp up over the last couple of years. And as part of ramping our program up, you're right, as the model years, as time has moved on, we've also expanded the model year eligibility for the existing vehicle to allow more people to participate in the program, just recognizing that the number of years that passed from the original adoption of the program. So that is open now, more open now, and it is available to any Valley resident, through the portal process. We have an online application process where you can apply. And then we also try to market the program as we do events up and down the Valley, when we do a tune-in tune-up event, or we do smaller events, maybe at a pizza shop, or where we do some educational events. And we're happy to always expand those in the communities as well. But you can actually apply now for the program. It is oversubscribed. We have a lot of demand in the program. We are working with the state to accelerate the state funding that can help satisfy that demand. It's a very active discussion. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about that in the regular board meeting. There's an item on the state budget, and there's some conversation around, how do we make sure we advocate for the needed resources in that program, because the demand and the need is very high, and we are pushing hard for the state to match that need. And so, and as we talk about that program, we come back to the board every year with approval of the program, the funding allocation. We'll be having a lot more conversation about that as well. But to answer your question, the funding is available. It's an active process. The other issue that we're seeing is vehicle supply chain issues that we're trying to address in the program as well. Having enough vehicles available so that as people get their vouchers and look for vehicles, they can upgrade into those, plug-in hybrid and electric other vehicles that are part of the program. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I just want to make sure, that it's available right now. It's accessible to a resident. They can just go to our portal. But one of the issues that we're trying to deal with right now is that we do need more money in the program, and it's actually a very active discussion with the state. We're actually pushing them right now to make sure there's sufficient funding in the program.
So there's like a waiting list for
Yes.
people still waiting for funding?
Yes. Now, as we work our way through that list, there is funding in the state budget, again, that we're pushing for. There's also funding in the new state budget. So the current budget as well as the new state budget, we can keep, allocating and putting money into the program as we push the state on that. So it's not it's a waiting list in that there's a lot of applicants, and we're working our way through those different applicants. And we hope to not run out of funding. That's the goal, is to keep getting the state funding that we need, along with the local funding that we put into the program. But that is something that we'll talk about a little bit more this morning, and we return to the board for the program approval for the coming year. By then, we hope we have better news or good news on healthy state allocation as well for that.
All right. I see no more questions from the board. So I'm going to read something really quick. If you are participating on Zoom video conference, please press the raise hand button on the participants list so that you may be recognized to speak. If you are participating on Zoom audio conference, please press *9 so that you may be recognized to speak. Also *6 to mute and unmute yourself. So *9 to be recognized, *6 to mute and unmute. Please be prepared to speak when your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number is called. Please state your name prior to beginning your public comment. We'll look over and see if there are any public comments.
Okay, we have Manuel Cunha.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are. I'm in DC, and I want to thank the opportunity to speak on the budget. I want to thank the entire staff and the subcommittee putting this together, as we can go from $130 million back in 94, 95, 96, today over $500 million dollars of funding grants. So it's tremendous. But the question I have, Samir, I think this is, and for Mr. Chairman, is the making sure that we have the appropriate funds to deal with the used truck program for our vendors, and especially for farmers, that in 23 year, many of the tier 3 trucks are going to be out, and we're going to have a real serious problem of transportation. So I just wanted to make sure that we have sufficient amount of funds, and even in the state budget and the reserves, that we make sure that we have that available for our farmers as well as for our vendors. The low mileage trucks, we're talking about 50,000 mile type trucks, need to be available for our farmers to deliver from the fields to the packing houses, et cetera. So that is very important. And the second item, Samir, and I'm not sure how we deal with this one, but on the smoke, and I want to thank the staff and the board for getting the monies that everybody worked hard to get, is to have a second round of equipment be available for purchase by some of our vendors with some limit of the amounts. But we had our first round and we spent the 30 million. And I think it will be important to have a second round because of the type of crops, and especially with this water situation, irrigation situation, is going to be worse. So to make sure that we have enough funds in there for a second round of probably around 15 million, but however that would work, Samir and the board, that we would get those funds from ARB to help us. And so far, the funding amounts that have been appropriated to the farmers, I've been talking to a lot of them, and it's working out to what we gave the growers for their cost is working. We have a few hiccups, but overall, those are my two items, Mr. Chairman, and the board. Again, I want to thank the entire staff. A lot of money, and yes, Mr. Pearson, this district has done a lot of work and a lot of good work. And thank you again for everything you've done for agriculture in our rural communities.
Thanks for your comments. Manuel, do you want to address any of those, Samir?
So Chair, board members, yeah, I can provide just a quick response. On the low use ag trucks and the upcoming compliance deadline, that's something that the board has heard some have some discussion around. Certainly that issue has been communicated to the state, to see what can be done to ensure, that these fleets are indeed in compliance with the rule, and that there aren't impacts to food supply chains. And obviously these trucks move goods from point A to point B and then ultimately to market. And so there's issues related to making sure that there's some sort of effort to ensure that issue is addressed. The budget, as far as funding goes, that's something that, as the state hopefully comes up with some ways to address that issue, we'll certainly look for opportunities, in the context of any funding. There's a funding component to that, to assist with that transition. So I would imagine we'd return to the board, with anything related to the any available resources that might assist with that issue that's coming here in just a few months. And as far as the ag burning alternatives, there is allocation in the budget at a pretty high level for continued expenditure and appropriation of the funds that we received to support that program. So to the extent that the board would want to look at the allocation, say for fleet expansion, that's something that we'll certainly take a look at and would need to come back to the board to discuss in the future. So that is something that definitely jotted down, and would like to learn more about the potential opportunities with that.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin Abernathy.
Madam Clerk, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and staff. Kevin Abernathy, Milk Producers Council and Dairy Cares. Going through these presentations and just the massive undertaking of staff, how do you describe that in a couple words? And I kind of have to just say A+ from a grading scale standpoint. Absolutely phenomenal work that you guys have been doing and continue to do. And I kind of wanted to give a little bit of an example of some of the minutia that happens behind the scenes well before any of this stuff comes to the board. It was mentioned multiple times about the electrification of the feeding operation. And I've got a personal quest to see how close to zero when it comes to criteria pollutant emissions that I can get to. And I will say that that program has, when we first started, I thought, geez, we might hit 100 tons. we're gonna blow at least 1,000 tons of criteria pollutants out of the box on this. But that being said, there's when the state's pushed to go electric, I gotta hand it to Aaron Tarango and Todd DeYoung in looking at the 1/1/2023 on trucks and moving over to electric and also CNG LNG trucks. And we've discovered, we went down to the LA truck show and met with Volvo and Mack. And currently the majority of our 1.8 million cows in the state are fed with 10-wheelers with vertical mixers or pull behind vertical mixers. Current state of electrical technology does not have the horsepower today to do what we need to do. So we're looking at some alternatives and really thank the district for their visionary look at this and working with the industry on coming up with solutions before they become problems. But ultimately, I just wanted to thank staff and a couple members that we've been working with. And we're going to get there. It may not be in the expeditious time frame that others would hope, but my goodness, when I look at the successful programs that we've implemented, it makes me very proud to be a stakeholder and someone that has the ability to work to benefit public health and air quality in the Central Valley. So thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dennis Tristo. Dennis, it looks like you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself? There we go.
Good morning, members of the governing board. I'm Dennis Tristo, and I'm here on behalf of the San Joaquin Valley Association of Certified Air Permitting Professionals. And first, I'd like to echo the comments of Manuel Cunha and Kevin Abernathy. Many of us have been involved, including myself, with the Air District since its formation. And we have seen a dramatic increase in efficiency and in addressing the air quality issues that we have before us in the valley. I wish to echo the comments made by board member Dr. Sharif on that the district has a story to tell, and we need to get some of this out there. And then one of the issues that I wanted to bring up, it's not an issue, it's a compliment to the staff, Brian Clements and his permitting staff, is that as we go forward, education for the regulated community is paramount. Staff has put together training sessions on permitting assistance for many of the business associations that we're involved with. And in particular, we have one that was conducted for the California Association of Food Producers. We look for more of these to come on in the future. They're being planned. The Small Business Assistance Program, all of these funded within the budget, are a very valuable resource that myself and colleagues take advantage of in order to streamline the permit process from the applications perspective, and also to ensure that there is knowledge of what the requirements are for permits. The adage is that if we submit incomplete applications, that assists the staff and the regulated community. And to that end, the district is doing a superb job in outreach and in communicating the various complexities required for permit applications. It streamlines the entire process. So I'm pleased to see that these outreach programs will continue. I wanted to emphasize to the Air District Board that the Small Business Assistance Service is critical to the needs of the regulated community, and just keep up the good work on that. And yes, this budget has increased dramatically since the Air District was initially formed but the requirements and services that are provided to address our air quality issues are being met. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Connie Young.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Connie Young, Fresno resident, retired registered nurse, and volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, also known as CCL. And thank you for all the work that has gone into this extensive budget and all the work that it represents in terms of what you're doing to improve our air quality. Thank you for that. Perhaps you can guess what I'm going to say, however. Regarding the research and technology advancement portion, I urge you to add climate change to the list of important areas to be studied. Its connection to air pollution and wildfires is well established. The sooner and more that we know about it, the more effective our response will be. Likewise, in regard to effective public outreach and communications related to wildfire emissions, I'd encourage you to work with climate scientists as well as land management agencies. We ignore climate change as a major contributor to wildfires at our peril. The Air District should include information about climate change in its wildfire public education campaign as well. We won't solve this problem if we ignore one of the major factors contributing to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie.
Next, we have Pedro Hernandez.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pedro Hernandez. I'm the Deputy Director with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. CVAC is a coalition with nearly 2 decades of experience working on environmental justice and public health issues here in the San Joaquin Valley. And my comments, of course, will be centered around the budget and a few recommendations that we hope can support attainment of air quality goals. So similar to the previous speaker, we urge the board to dedicate resources to incorporate climate analysis into rulemaking and policy updates. Without its accounting for these changing baseline conditions, we fear that the district will fall behind on meeting these long overdue clean air goals. Second, regarding to the emissions reductions program, while the district has committed to updating its new policies, current assumptions are based on the very limited sample size of past permitting. Without a comprehensive retroactive analysis, there remains much potential for flawed foundational assumptions in the revision of the ERC program. In the April ERC Public Advisory Workgroup meeting, an EPA representative stated that there is technically nothing stopping the Air District from conducting such retroactive analysis. And so we urge the board to dedicate resources to support this retroactive ERC assessment and review unexamined banks to determine compliance and identify the full scope of assumptions. Regarding community air protection, ozone and PM 2.5 are becoming year-round issues, leaving many residents, of course, in every corner of the valley without respite from air pollution. So we recommend that building from established models, including work being done by the AB 617 Community Steering Committee in Stockton, that the Air District dedicate resources to create a valley-wide program to provide air filters for protection specifically for vulnerable communities, to provide immediate protections from extreme events, and while the district is progressing on its air quality attainment. Finally, we urge the district to dedicate resources to account for the social and public health costs of air pollution in its rulemaking and policy updates. This is going to be really important to provide more opportunities for frontline communities to raise their issues, but also to have a fuller scope of assessment and consideration and the consideration and adoption of policies. And so my time's running out, but thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And for any questions or follow-up, I can be reached at pedro@healthcleanair.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Pedro.
So through the chair, there's no additional public comment on Zoom, and we do not have members of the public present in Fresno or Bakersfield, but there's one member in Modesto who would like to speak.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Gilbert Rosas, and I am the Director of Sustainability and Adaptation at Modesto City Schools. I also serve on the Electric School Bus Advisory Council for World Resources Institute. For the past 10 years, I've kind of specialized in energy conservation, solar and battery storage addition to schools, as well as grant writing and electric school bus deployment. I've worked with you, and I guess my basic thing that I want to say to this board and to everybody at the Air District is that we've done great work together, and that I appreciate our partnership, and that we are continuing to do a lot of good things together. At Stockton, we secured 11 battery electric buses and added 24 chargers in total. I also helped get $8.4 million in grants and rebates. Our claim to fame there at Stockton was that we went from design to construction to batteries to school buses charging in less than 11 months. And so that was a great accomplishment. On March 14th, I joined Modesto City Schools. And this past January, our school board has passed and approved the purchase of 30 battery electric school buses. We're also breaking ground June 1st on our infrastructure, where we will have the capability of charging 54 buses. And I guess I also wanted to compare the fact that we've worked with the Mean Green mowers on your clean yard machines, as well as battery electric gators. We've participated in Clean Air Day with you guys. We have done kickoff events where Samir and Jamie and Dr. Pacheco Warner also came out. And so I just wanted to say that we truly appreciate the partnership, and that I see all the work that's gone in to put all these different programs together and keep all these budgets moving. And I hope that there's a lot more funding coming from the state. And I just want to let you know that we have an ally now locally that will work with you hand in hand to promote and look at any pilot program there is. Modesto City Schools has a great board and superintendent and administrative staff that are willing and able to help in any way we can. And we're looking forward to participating in all these programs. So I just want to say that you're doing incredible work. I've seen and learned about environmental justice. Both Stockton and Modesto are 82% percentile Cal EnviroScreen disadvantaged communities. And this is an amazing thing. We're at the right time, at the right place, doing the right thing for our students and our community. And I just appreciate everything that you guys have done, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very kind words, Gilbert. And you're the guy that's out there doing the real work. So pretty amazing, pretty amazing.
Okay, through the chair, there is no additional public comment.
Okay, so I guess before I close the public hearing, this is not an action item. We're bringing it back for adoption on June 16th. I did want to once again thank the finance staff. What a in-depth presentation. I think it was about 90 pages in a couple hours. Truly amazing for me personally. And then the members, Member Mendez, Dr. Sheriffs, Member Lewis, Dr. Pacheco Warner, Member Preciado, I'm sorry, and Member Reyes for sitting, and as Buddy refers to it, as watching paint dry twice. But without you going over this, again, giving the confidence to the rest of the board and the public taking a deep dive, we would have a lot more questions for the public. So again, on behalf of myself, I appreciate it.
They've actually got better. I think that was maybe my fourth time sitting on the committee, so I have a lot of experience in this. But you honed this whole thing into a minute 33 or 1 hour 33 minutes of presentation. It was very extensive, very good. You never fell off the horse any. It was very good. So I have to commend you for that, because as you guys do it, you're getting better and better and better. I think the first time you did it, when Syed first left, I think it took me 50 minutes to get your part done. So
he's not keeping track though.
Yeah.
So, very good. Any last comments? All right. If not,
Chairman?
Through the chair, it looks like Supervisor Wheeler has a question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
First of all, just thank you for a great job today, and thank the budget team for doing a great job. I've been on it a couple of times too, and I think every time, like Buddy said, every time we do it, it seems to get better, more efficient, and get it done quicker because they do such an excellent job presenting it to the public. So thank you, and hope to see you at the next meeting. I'll get real lucky. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Seeing no one else, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. The public hearing